Hello and welcome to today's webinar where we'll be chatting about scaling in high growth companies and the hiring practices that'll be needed as companies scale. So today with me we have Matt Whitteker to my left. Matt's the co-founder of Ascent Compliance, the world's top supply chain data management platform. Ascent has raised over $220 million in funding, 6 global offices and 500 employees. Ascent works with 70% of Fortune 500 manufacturers, and Matt is also the founder of NoNotes.com, a global call recording and transcription platform with over 1 million registered users, and as well Fight for the Cure, the world's largest white-collar only charity boxing event, which is a great event as I've been and participated. And to my right, Donna Baker, which a lot of you know if you're tuned in to the other Keynote Search webinars. Donna is our managing partner and leads our executive search practice. So today what we'll be talking about, as I mentioned, is scaling and the hiring needs that come with high growth companies. And today we're going to walk through a bit of Matt's journey at Ascent Compliance to what eventually led to bringing in an external CEO. But we'll start, I guess, Matt, if we'll just hop in, we'll get you to talk about your business and kind of how you got started and your full journey.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a lot of fun, and we've worked together with Keynote for a little while now, so it's great to sit down and chat with you guys. It's a great initiative.
Thanks for coming.
In terms of Ascent, it's a bit of a crazy story. It started like many businesses, drunk in the back of a cab with myself and my co-founder going downtown to a bar, and he worked in the consulting space. So basically, they would do supply chain data management consulting projects. So they would go to an electronics company, for example, and ask for what's called a bill of materials. And a bill of materials is essentially a recipe for what goes into a product. So this microphone that I'm speaking into would have a bill of materials or a BOM. And they would go up and they would call each part or component manufacturer and ask for their compliance data. And they would do this on what's called bill of material row or BOM row, literally kind of a call center type job, collecting data from suppliers for their end client. And they would go to one company and call up all their suppliers, and then they would go to another company and call up many of the same suppliers and ask for a lot of the same data. And John was in the cab with me that night and kind of venting, like, I'm selling these consulting projects, one-offs, and he's like, there must be a way to build software to automate this. And I had started NoNotes about a year before, so I knew a little bit about building software. I naively thought it'd be easy to build an enterprise software company serving massive Fortune 500 companies, which obviously wasn't the case. And we looped in a technical co-founder. His name was Rob, and chained him to a desk, built an MVP. I did the website, the branding, and the marketing. John did the sales. And fast forward 10 long years, so it's really aging me right now. But fast forward 10 years, and Ascent is a global company.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny, your story. I think we started very similar at a beach or pool bar in Mexico was where the idea for our company came up. So yeah, I hear your story. Our growth has been definitely a bit, we've been just under 5 years, but we've grown now. We've opened our second location. We're a small but mighty team. But yeah, obviously we focus on the talent side of helping companies like yours grow.
Well, it's been great working with you as well. I mean, the Ottawa market, I feel, is hotter than ever. Like, what are you guys seeing in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely, I think every single company is feeling that pull, I would say. The market is so tight. And that's across any industry. As I was having this conversation with a client of mine in a retail-based industry, and they found it really difficult to find talent for their business, as is the construction real estate sector, as is the tech sector. It's just, it is the war for talent, as they call it, I guess. But the talent market is really tight. And I think it's companies need to start looking at how do we attract people to Ottawa, and then how do we attract them to our business within that framework. So
nice, yeah.
Well, what we found, and we've got an internal recruitment team, but having somebody like Keynote help in the search, particularly if you're going outside your own geo, where maybe your recruitment team doesn't have as much of a network, it's really complimentary working with someone like you guys. So you guys have carved out a cool niche where you're local companies, but you're able to source nationally or even internationally. It's a really cool fit that you guys have for fast growing companies. So it's great.
Matt, as the marketing guy at Keynote, to appreciate the great words here. It's a great little pitch for us.
Hey, it's all true. It's all true.
But I guess we'll get back to you here. So you talked about Ascent and the growth that you guys had. At what point did you realize that you wanted to bring in an external CEO, and what kind of factors did you consider to make that decision?
The outside CEO decision actually happened in a pretty fluid way. So for anybody listening, there's a charity boxing event in Ottawa. Kyle actually boxed on it, so he knows it very well. Donna and Keynote have actually sponsored it for years. But in any case, I coached boxing for a lot of years, and that was actually my first business. And through that, I met a man named Andrew Waitman, and we were just friends. And I would train him in boxing every Wednesday. And it turns out that he, and I didn't even really know this when I met him, but is the country's most decorated venture capitalist, or at least one of them. And he's been out of it for a while. He would be the most if he was still in it. But him and I would box on Wednesday nights, and he was growing a company in Ottawa called Pythian, and he'd done a great job. He'd grown it from like when he started at like 4 or 5 million up to about 50 million when he left. And he comes in one Wednesday, like would be every other Wednesday that we box. And I just asked him, like, how's your day, Andrew? And he said, well, today was good, but I quit my job. I was like, what? You quit your job? And for a whole host of reasons, he thought that he was going to move on from his current company. And he had known about Ascent and what we were doing for years. We would just exchange kind of jabs and business stories. So fast forward a week, we give him one of our spare offices so he could just kind of volunteer and work out of it. So he didn't have to work from his home. He wanted an office to work at it. Happened to be like the most hot, like weird temperatured office in that space. Anyway, he volunteered for 6 months, which was absolutely incredible. Having somebody of his caliber come in and volunteer and just help out and see what we're doing. And then after 6 months, he just said, I think we're onto something. I think we can make this something big. How about I join as your first investor and CEO? So it wasn't the traditional go out and find a CEO. It was just perfect timing for both Andrew and for us. And he came aboard as our CEO, first outside investor, and it's been a great ride. But there's 3 co-founders, and we always found it difficult to who would be the CEO, and we never really appointed any one of us as the official CEO. Okay. And as a company scales, that becomes difficult because everyone's looking to 3 people instead of 1 person for direction and for decisions. So I think any other person or entrepreneur that was in our situation, if you really want to go for it, if you want to raise money, if you want to go beyond a certain point, and that's probably like, I don't know, 50, 75 people, you really should appoint like a main CEO. And particularly for a product company or a company where you're going to go and raise money, because the first thing the investors are going to ask you is, well, who's the CEO? Yeah. And as soon as you say co-CEO, the investors kind of look at each other and then they look back at you and they feel uncomfortable about it. And we had that conversation before Andrew joined a couple times with a couple different investors, and they're like, eventually you're going to have to figure that out. So it was a great experience for us. I wouldn't change anything about how it worked out. And if there's 3 co-founders that want to make a big company that eventually want to raise money, you kind of should be thinking about either who's going to be the CEO, or maybe we don't want to ruin those friendships or those relationships, kind of like the position we were in, and have one person then tell the other people what to do, hold them accountable. Finding an outside CEO might be a good fit.
Yeah. Now, Donna, what I guess in the marketplace when you're doing your searches, what factors do you typically see, or reasons why companies are looking to hire external CEOs? Yeah,
I mean, Matt's certainly kind of touched on a bit of it there, but I think when an organization is looking to go from being a kind of founder-led to, I would say, like first external CEO-led, a lot of it comes down to, I think, sometimes the skill capacity of the founder. Typically, they're technically very strong. They've had an idea, they've had a concept, they've grown it, and they're not necessarily armed with the skills to be able to go out and attract some of the larger investments that I know Ascent have been very successful in attracting over the course of their journey. And I also think it helps just to bring a different perspective. If you bring an outside CEO in, they've seen more than just this one product or one company. Typically, they've been in 2 or 3, hopefully, with success stories at the end of it. And I think just that breadth of knowledge, experience, being exposed to kind of different situations, different investors, different ways to take something to market can really, really help elevate a company. And then I think lastly, it just really takes a different person. I think to start something from scratch and build it takes one type of person, and then to kind of take that foundation or kind of what's there to that next level, the growth portion, almost takes like a different skill, a different type of individual.
It was great having Andrew in our corner, and there's some funny stories. Like at one point, and this was before Andrew joined, and just to your point, Donna, we had an investor call and say, and this is just over the phone, and okay, so walk us through your cap table. And John and I looked at each other and what's a cap table? we didn't even really, because there's like, 3 co-founders. Like we signed an incorporation document and whatever. And
we all threw some money in.
Exactly. So, if you're going to really take it to the next level, like either you should have a really good board of advisors, at least that could coach you through that. I mean, none of us had really formal business training, which is shocking. So having Andrew come in and he just brought a depth of knowledge and experience, just like what you're saying, Donna. So, it was, again, a great experience for us, and we'd still be like part of the Ascent lore. And like one of the stories is we had a pool house. And you'll probably be asking, what's a pool house? So we decided rather than pay expensive commercial rent, that we would buy a mansion, 6,000 square foot house, and that would be our office. And then we would have pool parties on the weekends. Turns out that wasn't a great idea. And people like, particularly one investor showed up and slipped on the ice because we didn't shovel the driveway and obviously didn't invest. So there were all these things that when we brought in an external CEO, we really grew up quick as a company and helped us scale and obviously go from a lifestyle business in a pool house to a global SaaS company will eventually be worth $1 billion. So it's been a great journey from that perspective.
Yeah.
And
I was just going to ask, like, as a founder, do you then feel that kind of you've been armed with more skills from kind of bringing in an external CEO?
Andrew tells everybody, and this is just an Andrewism, if you work with me, you're essentially going to get an MBA. Okay. And it's so true. Yeah. Like he teaches at Queen's for years. He lectures at Ottawa UMBA, and I've gone on to give some lectures, and I feel like working with Andrew, I've gotten an MBA. So it's
a real life MBA.
A real life MBA, exactly. So it's something that for your listeners, if they own a company and really want to get to that next level, it's fun to have that type of partner with you along for the ride.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask, when you guys were still young as a company, what were the first few key hires that you guys made, and were they effective? Were they the right hires? I guess if you could just talk to some of that.
We bootstrapped to, I guess it was probably a $3 million run rate. And it was, I was the head of marketing, John was the head of sales, and then Rob was our first technical person. And essentially we would go round robin as we would get more monthly recurring revenue. As we would get more revenue, we would hire a developer, and then we would hire a regulatory / customer success manager. Developer, customer success. And we would literally just volley back and forth.
Between the two.
Yeah, as soon as you can afford it, you hire another one. And that went on for the first, I'd say 20 employees. John stayed the only salesperson. I was the only marketing person. And we scaled up on the product side, so on the engineering and the dev team, and then on the customer success / regulatory team. And we really just ping pong back and forth as much as we could afford. It's like, can we afford more developers this month, or can we afford another customer success person? And a little bit would get carved out for marketing, just for more AdWords and more content production and more design. But really, first 20 hires was just volleying back and forth, building up the team in line with our recurring revenue. That again all changed when Andrew came, because he was our first outside investor. We had a bit more cash in the bank, and he immediately went out. His first executive hire was head of customer success, because we had a fairly built out team. Yeah. Next executive hire was like these were almost in parallel, a CFO and a head of product. Okay. So those were the 3 people that rounded out our executive team. we brought in somebody for like a senior marketing person. And then after that, we started building out the sales org. But until we got the head of customer success, the head of product, and a CFO, it was like really ping-ponging back and forth.
Nice, fair enough. I guess while we're talking about startups and scaling through hiring and growth, Donna, do you have any tips? I know there'll be a lot of startups that'll probably tune into this as to maybe some common practices that you see need to be improved with a lot of the startups you work with, or just any tips in general to help them out.
Yeah, of course. And it's a great question. I'm going to say you should hire what you need by the sounds of it, because it's been very successful and what you can afford on the day. But no, I think in terms of hiring tips, I think you do have to start looking at it as kind of two different parts. One is a process. We're big believers in process, and we've mapped out our own kind of recruitment process for our clients, and it's proved very successful. So start thinking about, who are we as an organization? How do we want to attract talent? What does that talent look like? How are we going to find them? How are we going to, give them a compelling reason to come and work for us? And then what does the kind of the onboarding and retention part of the recruitment, because that still is recruitment, but what does that look like for someone kind of stepping into the organization? I think you have to start forecasting. You have to hire for what you need today if you're a startup, but you also have to be thinking about how to start kind of filling that funnel and having those conversations. I mean, like you said, you were having a conversation with Andrew without even kind of knowing that you were having a conversation that he could be your next CEO. But you have to start strategically thinking about, okay, what are the top 3 critical hires that I need to make, and who do I know that could potentially either be that person or know somebody that could be that person, and start to have those conversations a good probably 6 to 12 months in advance, because that's probably how long you were talking to Andrew without even knowing it, in a way, about kind of stepping into that role.
Well, we're actually reliving a bit of the startup life right now, because we're opening global offices. So one example, one of the offices that we opened in a customer success capacity, I went to visit last month. And it turns out that most of the people that were hired are all friends of friends, or like a cousin or a brother. And that's really not the best way to get the absolute best talent in any given city or in any given market. But usually that's how things unfold at the start, because you're new and people don't recognize your brand. It's a big risk. You're not going to go from working at Microsoft to work in the pool house. So startups have to basically hire their friends and anybody in their network to start. But if you plan for success exactly along the lines of what you're saying, you should be building a network. You should be out there meeting other potential developers that you can bring on board, other potential senior executives on board. So as soon as you can afford it and convince them that it's a good idea to leave Microsoft or Oracle to join your startup, at least you know them and you're pipelining. And that's one of the things that we started doing in that other office that I mentioned. We started doing just job fairs so people would at least learn about us. And as they get ready to leave their other corporate jobs, we at least become top of mind. So it is important to build that network and really at least get an idea of who you want to attract at a certain point and start those relationships early.
Yeah. And I think it is about being nimble as an organization. Like who you need when you are in kind of, day one startup mode isn't necessarily who you'll need at month 6 or month 12. So it's being able to be nimble and adjust. And what you hire for your organization today might be right for where you are today. But I would encourage anyone that's going through a startup not to kind of just stick to that kind of one box and not to worry about shifting and realigning what you're looking for, either from an employee or for your organization, because we've seen that in our organization. The type of individual that we hired on day one was perfect for where we were day one. Now that we're 4 years old, and you probably kind of see the same with the developers that you hired day one did a phenomenal job and got you to a certain point, but are they the ones to get you to that next point or that next point or that next kind of stage of a company's evolution?
It's interesting when you look at the pie chart of where all of our new hires have come from. 3 years ago, if you looked at that chart, it's like 90% internal referral. And then over time, as people recognize your brand, more traffic to your website, then it becomes a bit of inbound applications. And then after that, then it becomes job fairs and recruitment. So the pie chart has really expanded from almost 100% internal referral, which basically is hire your friends or somebody that you know, or then it's really expanded out to, you know, external search, working with somebody like Keynote to find like the perfect fit for an executive hire. But that pie chart, as you mature, is really going to build out. But in the beginning, it's fine. Like, when I think about all of our first hires, there's a Christmas video, and one of the people, this actually came inbound off a job board. She's like, yeah, I wasn't really sure if it was a real company. And then now people walk into our office and they're like, oh my God, like there's a boxing ring in the middle of it. There's hundreds of people. The energy is great. So, you know, any company is going to go through these different phase changes, and it's fine if you're just hiring people in your network in the beginning, but you do have to think about, if you're going to grow and scale, how do we make those relationships with the technical people, with the marketing people? And specifically in Ottawa, marketing people, and Kyle, you'll know this, and you might have to bump up his salary after this, but marketing people are really hard to find with great, like, full-rounded SEO, PPC, PR, understand demand gen, brand marketing, inbound, outbound. Like, it's tough to find these people. So you have to be pipelining well in advance.
Yeah. And I think kind of just on that marketing kind of stream as well, you have to know who you are as an organization. You have to know what your brand is, what you're kind of taking out there. And I don't mean from a product perspective, but what you're taking out there as a business to attract the right people. So who are you? What's your culture like? What's the kind of the what does the Ascent employee look like almost? You have to kind of figure that out as well as you grow and scale to attract the right people.
Well, we did a bit of a cultural shift when we brought in our current VP of, so in most companies it's called VP of HR, but we rebranded it to employee experience, so the EX team.
Yeah.
And when we brought in Kira, she brought in a whole new discipline around pipelining, around employee, well, she literally called it employee experience.
Yeah.
And that's what we take to the job fairs, and that's what we take and promote, is you have a team at Ascent that is a cliche to say because we have the boxing ring in your corner, and really going to support your career progression in the company, and here are the benefits, here are the perks, and you know, the chocolate almonds are really, really popular, but we do the snack bar, we do catered lunches, and there is a lot of perks working at Ascent. So the employee experience team has really done a good job at promoting that. And I think over time we've gotten more brand recognition in the city. And I mean, you guys,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You tell me.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You have. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think you've done all right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been fun.
So you've mentioned the boxing ring a couple times now. Do you guys ever get in there and just go at it?
It's used, if I were to break down what the boxing ring is used for, it's used as a conversation starter, first and foremost.
Yeah.
It's used for photo ops, number 2. And then number 3, it's a quarterly argument between me and the CFO who's trying to annex it to make more room for desks. And it's like, nope, that's sacred land. You can't touch it.
Yeah, I was going to say the cost benefit analysis there might not live up. Although a boxing rink is far smaller than the soccer field that we would have in our office, I feel.
Yeah, fair enough.
If we had to have something.
Well, what I say, it's 400 square feet. And if somebody really wants to, they can go work in there. They're like, fine, bring your desk, put it in the ring.
I feel like you could take a laptop and lie down in the ring.
Absolutely.
That's great. Matt, do you have, I know you've given a lot of advice already, but do you have any other tips for founders starting their company and how to really scale to that next level?
When you're starting your company, and we lived through this, John, Rob, and I, for the most part, you should be doing 3 things. You should be finding product market fit, you should be going to the gym, and you should be eating. That's it. And you should be just laser focused. And one thing, you know, I don't want to be a hater, but there's so many startup events and there's so many, like, again, I like Gary Vaynerchuk, but so much like entrepreneur porn that people get sucked into that when they should be just like grinding and finding product market fit and meeting customers and getting ARR. And I go to these startup events and some of the speakers, they're giving this talk to like hundreds of people. And it's like, what's your ARR at? And they're like, sub $100,000 or sub $10,000, and they're giving these talks. It's like, no, you go get some revenue. Like, go figure out product market fit. You should be in front of your customers, not in front of these people talking about, the hustle or the grind or the entrepreneurship. So those are the three things. And I didn't make this up. This is kind of from Paul Graham at Y Combinator. You got to be eating, working out, and finding product market fit, and that's it. And maybe that's cliche advice, and it's definitely not tactical, but since I don't know everybody who's listening's particular situation, that's all I can say. If anybody listening wants particular advice on how to scale and what they're doing, you kind of have to look at their vertical and their product offering or their service offering, and then brainstorm and figure it out. So happy to do that with anybody else. But in the beginning, it's just like the hustle and focus has to be completely directed towards your product and how it resonates with customers, and quick iteration. This is like the lean startup movement, quick iteration, take it back out to the street, see if that fits, and then keep going. And one quick anecdote, when I started No Notes, it was originally going to be a transcription company for students, for undergrads, and got featured in Mashable. It got featured in, like, I was in media across the country. Turns out no undergrads are going to pay for somebody to type up their lecture notes. Like, it's just, it turns out that was really stupid. I mean, I thought it was a good idea, but it turned out it was completely wrong. But over the course of laser focus on trying to grow that business, it turns out that the PhD research faculty, the master's research faculty, the professors, and other researchers actually want call recording and transcription bundled into one loop, and now there's 1 million users. So it started off as, completely misdirected, but laser focus, quick iterations, and listening to customers turned out to, okay, well, now it's $1 million company, and people all over the world use it. Yesterday 2,600 people signed up, so it's cool. Yeah. But it takes focus.
Yeah.
If I were out speaking at some startup event, I probably would have done that.
Fair enough. And Donna, I know we touched on quite a bit as well, but do you have any other tips from a hiring standpoint for startups?
Yeah. I think it's kind of having that maturity to step back and realize that you don't know, I think, everything as a founder. I think you have that passion, you have that drive, and you have that focus, and you have to. And I think that's kind of what sets kind of founders apart from people that, don't kind of go out there and start their own businesses. But it's being able to say, okay, I'm good at A and B, but I need to hire somebody that can complement what I can do, that can kind of bring in that different mindset, different vision, and just a different skill level. I mean, we did it ourselves at Keynote Group. We hired Brad as our COO, and he's really brought a different layer of experience and knowledge to our organization. He's brought some really kind of strong operational process, but he's also helping us with kind of growth and acquisition, because he has skills that just James and I didn't have. But I think it takes an ability to step back and self-reflect and kind of just put the ego aside and say, yes, I founded this and I want to grow it and I want to be the CEO, but for the the win-win or the bigger success of the business, maybe we need to look at hiring these other areas. Nice.
And Matt, the tech sector in Canada, very exciting time. A lot of growth, a lot of good companies. What excites you most about it?
I think it's a great time to be starting a company not in the major markets like Silicon Valley or New York. The war for talent there compared to like an Ottawa, for example, is just so much more pronounced. And investors are excited about the new and upcoming market. So go to Austin, Texas, and it's a crazy tech boom. You go to Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver. These are markets where the U.S. investors can actually get like a 33% uplift on their dollar. So that's great. And they're excited about investing in Canadian tech companies. Like, for example, out of our investors, we've done 3 rounds. So we're on, our next round will be Series D. We had a Canadian investor with OpenText Enterprise Apps Fund. They're renamed as First Ascent Ventures. So that was our Canadian investor. Then we brought in Volition Capital, we worked with Volition Capital. They invested in us. And those were, so a Boston investor and a Canadian one. Okay. Then for our next round, it was almost it was a full gamut of people in New York, people in San Francisco. So all the U.S. investors, we ended up going with one out of Baltimore, Greenspring Capital, which has been a great partner as well. So then it's 2 outside U.S. investors, 1 Canadian, and then in our last round we went the private equity route, and it was a big New York private equity firm. So we've seen early stage investors, we've seen middle stage, and we've seen private equity, and I would say unequivocally they're all excited about markets that aren't New York or San Francisco, and they're all excited about Canadian tech or any company that's really disruptive. It doesn't really matter where you are. So great time to start a company in Canada. We also have IRAP, we have Shred. We've had tremendous success with the IRAP program, and I would recommend that to anybody. Like that's been fantastic for us. And it's just great time to be alive in Canada. It's bumping.
Oh, it's good. Well, I follow you on Instagram, and looks like you do a lot of great traveling around the world. I get a little envious. And Donna's about to go on vacation to Barbados as well. So kudos to you guys.
After Snowmageddon, it's smart to be going to Barbados.
Yeah. Although I wish that Snowmageddon had happened when I was there, because I would have found it far more amusing. But
as long as you park the car inside at the airport. I made the mistake once of doing the outdoor parking.
Yeah, never do that. Yeah.
But anyways, I guess before we wrap this up, is there anything else you guys wanted to add or thought about while we were chatting that we didn't get to chat about?
I want to thank the gang at Keynote here. Like, you guys are such, like, it's great to see a firm in your space being so proactive. You know, biased because you sponsored our event. Whitteker and Kyle, you even sacrificed, probably a mild concussion from my younger brother. But it's great to see the work that you guys do in the community, and we obviously really appreciate it. And it's been great working with you both, as a philanthropy partner, and then also as working directly with you guys. So thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and thanks for coming in. We know how busy you are, kind of, especially in your new kind of role as VP of Growth.
VP of Growth.
Yeah, really kind of taking on that next stage of the evolution of your company. So we appreciate you taking some time out of your kind of busy schedule to be here with us today.
Anytime.
Thank you.